So we have now looked at extruding as a way of creating basic shapes and forms, and lathing as a way of creating basic shapes. Another nice option for creating a lot of complex shapes out of 2D, or complex models out of 2D shapes, is this technique called lofting. So lofting involves creating a shape or a model from two 2D shapes. So where I have a path and I've got a shape, I can loft the shape along the path. So let's maybe make this a bit smaller. So if I go to Create, Geometry, Compound Objects, Loft, because I've got the shape selected at the moment, I'm going to click on Get Path, click on the path, and I now have my shape lofted along the path as here. Now that's a bit chunky, so I'm just going to go in and make some changes to the parameters. Okay, so one of the nice things about this, just as with the previous two techniques, I can go back in and modify the path after having created it. So if I select verts along this path, you can see I can move it around. I can also take the shape and I can maybe scale the shape along the path as well. So with this I also have the option of adjusting the shape's size at different positions along the path. So let's go to the Modify panel, Deformations down at the bottom, and click on Scale. So this opens a graph of the size of the shape along the entire length of the path. So let's make this a little bit easier. I'm going to stretch it out, zoom to the selected object, and now supposing I wanted the shape to taper along the length of the path, I can take the Move tool, move down the point there, and it's going to taper from one end to the other. I can do more sophisticated things than that though. For example, if I put in some corner or Bezier points, I'll put in a couple of Beziers, I can make the shape taper at either end, which is useful, or I can make some additional adjustments to the shape, such as, let's take these points and do something like that, and you can see we can adjust the shape in lots of different ways. So let's play with this a bit further. Let's take these, move them up, and we can create very interesting complex shapes very quickly. So that's using a loft. Let's do something a bit more complex with the loft here, where I'm going to create a loft with two shapes along a path. So let's say we want to make that pencil shape. We're going to create a line. I'm going to click on the grid here. In fact, I'm just going to press S when I'm clicking, and that's going to snap to the grid. So click from there to there. That's my pencil profile. Press S again to switch off the snap. And I'm going to create, let's say, the circular shape for the tip of the pencil, and I'm going to go to maybe make a star shape for the body of the pencil. Something like that. So here I'm going to make let's select the path, and we are going to go to Create, again, Geometry, Compound Objects, Loft. Because of the path selected, I'm going to click on Get Shape and click on the star shape for the body of the pencil. And that's getting me this nice pencil shape. Now I wanted though to turn more to a circular shape at the tip of the pencil. So let's go in the modify panel, and I'm going to go into the get shape, and I want to get the shape along the path. So I'm going to type in, say, 95% along the path right there. Click on get shape, and I'm going to switch to the circle. And what that's doing, if I press F4 to bring up my edge faces, it's creating this, might just make a couple of changes to my shape steps. It's creating this kind of tapered blend from one shape to the other. Now if I'm putting that point in at 95% along the path, what I want to do is now maybe make another instance of the star shape, say something like about 90% along the path. So let's type in 90, click on get shape, kind of select the star again. So now we've got the star all the way to 90%, and we've got the circle coming after that. If I go to sub-object mode, I can select any of those shapes, and I can move, scale or rotate to see the different effect, but I'm getting a nice blend from one shape to the other, which is good. Let's refine this a little bit more though by going into our modify panel, deformations, scale. I'm going to just stretch out my graph a little bit and zoom extents. I'm going to do the same. I want to round the end of the pencil there, so I'm going to take my Bezier and put in a little tangent there, and let's put in some corners, say right here and right here. So now if I wanted to round out the end of the pencil there, I'm going to just do it on the graph, get something like that going on. If I want to taper the front end of the pencil, I'm just going to move it down like that. So again, a really easy, flexible way of creating nice geometry that you can use in your models. So that's our loft, our lathe and our extrude. We're now going to look at pro booleans. So pro booleans come with a little bit of a health warning, as do extrudes. Pro booleans are ways of creating geometry that you would find hard to create in other methods. So let's say I am creating a box here, and I'm going to create, say, let's create a sphere. So let's create the sphere over here like this. So pro booleans are for taking intersections or cuts from one shape and applying them to another. So if I take my box here, I'm going to go create compound objects again, pro boolean, and I'm going to click on start picking, and I'm going to click on this sphere here. And initially it looks like the sphere disappears and nothing has happened, but what it has allowed me to do is to cut the sphere from the square. So if I open out the operands and I go to the sphere sub-object and I move it in, you can see I can cut into the box with the sphere, and I have the flexibility to move it, scale it, reposition it, and do things. So this can create shapes that would be quite difficult to create in other contexts. So if I say, let's go and do something like this, I've just duplicated by shifting and dragging to create a second sphere. So I've created this piece of geometry, but as I said, pro booleans, as with extrusions, come with a topology warning. And let's see, if I press F4, you can see we've got the mesh topology of the original sphere intact, but again we've got big n-gons going on. If we were to go above this and put on open subdiv, you see it collapses. Again, we could try using our quadify mesh. And as before, it's creating a mesh that is semi-regular. Let's bring it up, let's put in about 10% quality. So, which is usable in some circumstances, but it's not a mesh that stands up to an awful lot of scrutiny. But that doesn't mean you don't use it absolutely, but you just use it when other techniques are too difficult to work with. So with the quadify mesh we can work from that, and we can then go and put on open subdiv and get ourselves the kind of rounded smoothing that we might like to use. So that's using the Pro Boolean as a way of working. If you are interested in using Pro Booleans, there's a couple of very good tutorials on YouTube by Arrimus 3D. That is ARRIMUS 3D. You could just check him out on YouTube for more detailed techniques using Pro Booleans.